Do you have any questions before I? Yes.
Stretching.
Anyone else? Julian.
That's a perfect model for what happens. Especially look back. I actually wrote. I had a 3-year vacation, so I wrote. And when I saw what I wrote, realized that I said this. The way I didn't want to write no more because it was like too much.
It's too much, yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
You know, and I had boxes that I had wrote. I was writing on everything. It felt good to put it down, but once I read it, totally blew my mind.
Yeah, it's always difficult to carry a cross, any cross. If cross symbolizes you witnessing something, seeing something for what it is, it's always going to be difficult. You know, seeing that you're slowly aging, it's a difficult cross to carry. Seeing your kids walking away and maybe just calling you once a week or once a month, knowing full well you're getting older and weaker and more feeble, that's a difficult cross to carry. There was a movie that came out of India, it's called Baghban, which means gardener. It's one of the characters is perhaps the most famous of Indian actors. His name is Amitabh Bachchan. I first saw him act when I was in India in 1977. He's perhaps the tallest guy in the entirety of India. 1 billion people. He's like 9 feet tall. Pretty good looking guy too. The tradition in India is that when parents get old, and you don't, get married just to get married. You get married to have children. You don't get married to just have a child. Children, like 4 or 5 or 6 of them. So they're big believers in having a big family. That most of us did in the past, not like today. And so there came a point where they realized that they're getting too old and they need help. And they had 5 kids. So they talked to their kids with the assumption that they're going to stay a month with this kid, a month with that kid, a month with the other kid. And so they have a round table and they ask the parents to leave the room for a moment. And so this is what the kids decide. We'll take dad, like one kid says, I'll take dad and you take mom. And they have forgotten the fact that this couple, the husband and the wife, have been together. They haven't spent any time apart in the past like 40 years. And all of a sudden the kids, what they're saying, the architect of this particular plan, the kids are, Dad can stay with me for 5 weeks, mom can stay with you for 6 weeks. And the poor parents can't say much. They say, okay, but every night the father goes out and calls his wife because it's something they've never experienced before. It's unknown to them, the separation. And there comes a point where parents who have loved their kids all of a sudden begin to have an emotion unknown to them. They begin to hate their kids, feel betrayed by their kids. And the person who ultimately houses both of them together is the kid that was adopted by them. He's a car salesman. And then eventually the parents, once they realize what's been happening and they taste kind of the love that this adopted kid has for them, the father writes a book, he goes on the stage and rails against his own biological kids. Again, the point I'm trying to make ultimately, aside from encouraging all of you to watch Indian movies, is that whatever it is that you see, and you see them being completely unvarnished, as Immanuel Kant would say, see things for what they are in itself, then it's going to burden you. Now, most of us don't like to carry too much truth or honesty. It's just too much. And so one of the things that biology or God has given us is our ability to self-deceive. It's not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. Don't look at yourself in the mirror. You know, it's no joke when you sometimes watch movies and there are, I don't know, these animated movies where this old man has put like a cloth over all the mirrors. Rightly so. I mean, you always like to close your eyes and see an image of yourself when you were 20. You know, in your imagination, you're always young, agile, you know. But the moment a mirror shows you exactly what you look like, old, sick, tired, you don't know which one to, you know, get rid of, yourself or the mirror. Okay. Now, let me kind of very quickly relate that to this class and the final grade. Some of you may desire to get an A. That's the work of your imagination, perhaps, especially if you haven't done enough work. And you say, okay, I go to class once every 2-3 weeks. That should be good. I spend about 5 minutes on the assignments. That should be good. That should give me a C or a B or an A. Now, that's an imagined goal. And then, of course, the grade comes in and you have an F. That's the reality. Now, owning up to the fact that you in fact do deserve an F, it's going to be difficult. So self-deceive. You'll send me an email. But I came to class once a month. But my essay is 2 pages long. I usually only write 1 paragraph. So the point is ultimately, we enjoy self-deception, despite the fact that all of us in this class rail against it. It saves and protects us. Any other questions? You sure?
Self-deception.
What was the question?
I have no idea. Yeah, Sonny?
Not directly related to anything you're saying. Lack of being able to control, or lack of being able to like help somebody who's struggling. You have no, like it's just beyond your abilities, but you have to endure their suffering.
To see someone suffer and want to help them, perhaps to realize that you can't or you don't want to, or whatever the case may be. Let's approach this in different ways. It's an experience that all of us in this class can relate to. I went out to In-N-Out with the family. As we were leaving, this young woman came in. She was drunk, she was high, and she smelled really, really bad. And she was looking in In-N-Out's garbage bins to look for food. So I said, okay, let's go get some food. And she just stunk up the place. That's how bad she smelled. And I said, do you want number 1, number 2, or number 3? She says number 1. I say, you know, number 3 is double, double. You know, knowing that whatever she eats now, the next meal is going to be unknown when it's going to come her way. So she says, yeah, double, double is good. She said, do you want a shake with that? Yeah, I'd like a shake. Okay. So we get her food and we leave. Then we get to a traffic light and it's red. And there is this old woman now with a sign. She's probably about 75. And when I see her, I say, man, I'm going to be the first one by the stoplight, which means that my eyes are going to connect to hers. I just spent 20 bucks on this other person. She's going to be looking at me. And she's going to make me feel really, really crappy. I avoided eye contact as much as I possibly could. But then I couldn't but remember the image of my mom, who was 75, the image of my grandmother, who was 90 when she died, but specifically just people when they get old. And one of the things about human beings is that we don't like to lose. You've had kids. You know what it means when you play chess or backgammon or any game with them when they're only 4 years old. They don't enjoy defeat, even at the age of 4. Having a big ego, wanting to be a winner, wanting to be at the top, it just comes with being human. Now you have a 70-year-old woman who stands outside, and you know what she embodies? Defeat. Now, if you're drunk and high and behind the wheels and you don't just care, good for you. Less burden on you. But if you're not high, if you're completely sober and somewhat reflective, and you look at it and it reminds you of your mom and your grandparents and everyone out there who's been old and is old, then you say, you know, 10 bucks is not going to break me. Now, I didn't have problem, buying food for the first one. But then 5 minutes later, you realize now you have to carry another cross. But you do it with less willingness. You're more resentful. Then we give her some money, we drive by. And instead of taking the highway, we decide to take the streets. There's another traffic light. And this time there's a young man. By the time we got to the 4th homeless person, I no longer cared about race, color, poverty, homelessness. I just didn't care. I think you have to be made differently. It has to be your craft. It has to be your profession. It has to be your life goal where you say, like Jesus Christ, like Malcolm X, like all the heroes humanity has created. One of the things that Plato had mentioned in regards to a specific group of people who are there simply to protect the state, the country, the people, make sure that politicians don't cross lines, is that there are going to be this group of people called the guardians, the soldiers, the protectors of the state. Now, you guys all know the story of Clarence Thomas, one of the justices in the Supreme Court, and probably the rest of them, who are I don't know if you want to consider it guilty or not, but, they've kind of done things that we assume that human beings, especially the Supreme Court justices, should not do because they're not human beings. Now, Clarence Thomas is a human being who wants to get married, and he did. Do you sometimes give in to what your spouse wants? Absolutely. Is it true that sometimes your wife or your husband is a little bit more powerful than you are? Yes. Did once in a while Clarence Thomas tell his wife not to do A, B, C, D? Maybe. Did she listen? No. What the hell can he do? Divorce? No. He says, okay. Now Clarence Thomas has a nephew. He wants to go to school. He doesn't have money. He doesn't have connection. What does he do? He likes his nephew. In fact, he loves his nephew. Of course he's going to sleep with powerful people to get his family in Ivy schools, to make sure that his mom, who is old, who is sick, who is dying, can live in a nice house rent-free. If you're a good kid, that's the least you can do for your mom, and Clarence Thomas is no exception. Well, Plato knew this about human weaknesses. So you know what he said? Let us have those who want to protect people, country, state, laws. Let's interview them, making sure that they don't want to get married. They don't enjoy sex. They don't enjoy money. They're made to be compassionate, forgiving, always there for people. And if, like Queen Elizabeth around the 15th century, there came a point where Queen Elizabeth said, I'm not going to marry anyone. I've loved men, but I think the person I want to marry or the thing I want to be married to is England. If I'm attached to England, if I'm in a romantic relationship with England, it means I'm only going to do good to England. And who's going to benefit from my romantic relationship with my country? The people are. So Plato argued, let's have Gardens fall in love with Athens, with Greece. Not Republicans, not Democrats, not independents. Not money. They need to be completely cut off from any human relationships. They need to just be in love with their country and its tradition. Now, is it true that you're married? Yes. Is it true that you have children? Yes. Is it true that life is expensive? Yes. Is it true that sometimes you walk around town and you see homeless people? Yes. Is it true that you haven't grown to be completely callous to the point where you see someone in pain, where it doesn't impact you at all? You haven't become that callous. So what happens? You see pain, you're moved. And here's the thing, I think Jean-Jacques Rousseau was right. There is something about being a human being. The moment you see pain, you're moved. It's both a blessing and a curse. Is it true also that you have this idealistic sense of self? That Sanyu is a man who has read enough, who has seen enough, experienced enough. And through his years, he has cultivated enough awareness that inspire compassion and empathy. And that compassion and empathy works in this particular way. Whenever Sanyu walks to town and sees a homeless person, he is moved to action. He's got $20, which was meant to buy his kids some milk and some food. Maybe take his wife out. And his wife taking a shower, put some makeup, some nice clothes, ready to go. But Sanyu goes back home empty-handed, with no money in his pocket. And his wife says, I'm ready. I'm sorry, honey. I gave $10 to Joe and $5 to Jack and $20 to Janice. I got no money. Let's get home. Now, she's going to slap you around emotionally. And what that does for you, next time you want to be too empathetic, you say, okay, instead of paying someone $20, I'll just pay them like a penny. Now what happens is the old Sanyu and the new Sanyu, who's been slapped around into reality, they're going to be in conflict. I guess the short answer to your question is the following. All of us in this class have capacity. The moment you walk into society, society is going to impose its forces upon you. You just went for a walk, man. You've had a rough day. You just want 10 minutes to yourself. You don't want to carry anybody's cross. You paid your dues for that day. Then you go out and you see someone homeless or someone just needy, desperate. Now, one could say that should you help another, it may remove some of the burdens of the day that you've been carrying. It could also be the opposite. It depends really where you are. Can I tell you a story? And then we'll go home. I've had this friend for the past 15 years or so. He was a student, he went to school, he got his degree, and now teaches philosophy. Five days ago, and he's African American. That I need to say that he's African American. 5 days ago, he bought a Tesla from Pleasanton, I think. He just sends me a text to say hello, and then I say hello back, and all of a sudden, it moves into, yeah, I bought a brand new car, Tesla. And the wheels are shaking a little bit. I'm going to take it back. I'll call you later. I said, okay. And sometimes we, talk on the phone, and he tells me about his classes and what he's doing. And so he says, this strange thing happened to me. I said, what is it? So I go to the Tesla place, and the person who's helping me is African American. He looks at me and he says, hey brother, how you doing? So, I'm well, how are you? Good. What are you doing here? I don't know, it's not driving well. How much is it going to cost? He looks to his right, he looks to his left, and then the service person says, it's not going to cost you anything. Well, how long is the wait? He looks to his right, he looks to his left, and he says, I'm going to give you a car, a borrowed car. Just take it home, come back in a couple days. Well, how much is it going to cost? Again, he looks to his right, looks to his left, zero, nothing. Now, it's a very, very interesting experience. You have one African American in trouble, his car doesn't work. You have another African American who has the power to make it work. What these two African Americans have in common is a shared history. It's a history filled with pain. And it matters very little that the guy who has a Tesla is a millionaire or a billionaire. What this other person knows is that what you have does not remove the fact that you are African American. It matters very little how cunning and self-deceptive you are. When you walk into Safeway, you don't have a sign on your forehead that says PhD. All people see is African American. And what you have, one person is aware of the history, sees this history reflected in other person, and he says, I'm going to give you everything for free. Is he risking his job? Yes. But is he inspired by the history? Yes. Does the inspiration create empathy? Absolutely. And that's the trick. If you can walk around town, look at human life as a tragedy. And tragedy is interesting because tragedy is like the gods are the architects. They are the writers of human life. When you are a child, you have wings. That's the script. When you are 7, your teachers, your parents, society will clip your wings. Your parents will pound discipline inside you. Pain. When you are 20, you will have completely forgotten what it means to be a child and innocent. When you are 20, you're in the cradle of social forces. You want to be like other people. So you live in the eyes of other people. When you are 50, you realize that everything you have done was, for the most part, not bad. It's no longer satisfying. You betrayed yourself, others have betrayed you, and once you become a witness to this, sadness. You'll struggle to find meaning, but it'll be very, very difficult. Then you'll get depressed. You'll feel alone. You'll distract yourself the best you can. And then you go back to Mark Twain or Arthur Schopenhauer, that your most faithful companion, your physical body, will eventually collapse. And about 85% of human beings ultimately die a very painful, sad, tragic death. And then, those who love the person who's passed will grieve, will mourn, will have their picture frame up on the wall somewhere for maybe a week, maybe a month, but then they will be forgotten. And life will just continue. If you can walk around town and you know everybody's past and present and future, you can't but be both sad and happy for people. Happy in the sense that they're still walking around, which means that they still know how to deceive themselves. They still know how to remain afloat despite all the misery that's upon them. They know how to carry their cross well in a civilized way. You also see that they're going to be lonely. Their meaning is going to be stolen. Their identity is going to be stolen. And then they're going to witness their body collapsing. And when you walk around with that knowledge, you can't but be moved into kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. If that is something you're capable or have the capacity of doing, more power to you. And regardless of what any of you in this class may think about Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, the Buddha, these are great, great, great human beings. Because they had this unbelievable capacity, not only to carry the misery that live inside them, but to also carry the misery that live inside other people. That they were okay with being abused by other people, and still had the courage and the capacity to forgive. It's an amazing place to be as a human being. For you and I think, it's good to kind of just embrace and accept yourself as the way you are, which is, I can be kind and compassionate to maybe 5 people. The 6th one, I'll be pissed. So listen, yeah, Kevin?
You know, I want to say it's like some of us, I'm a case manager, so I hear the stories all day, and I got to refresh for every client. And it's like, I don't get it, you know, pick and choose. It's like, whoever comes in, come on, I'm going to help everybody. Come on, let's do this.
Yeah.
You know, and then I let them decide how much help they need. It's like you give them a script and let them go with it. If they come back, no. If they don't come back, life got it.
Yeah. You know, in Hinduism, it's an interesting tradition. If you can kind of approach this particular tradition, I think the right way, which is, some people are messiahs for the physical body. They're healers. You have a toothache, there's a dentist. You know, you have a migraine headache, someone creates a pill for you. You have a heart attack, they fix your heart. Some people are messiahs for the emotions. They're really, really good therapists. They really, really are. You know, some people are messiahs for the intellect. You know, you want to understand the Bible, for example, or you want to understand algebra. Well, I don't know. They're there to help you intellectually to prosper. And some people are simply designed to help people who have spiritual ailments. And, if your body is sick, don't go to Jesus. If you're in need of a therapist because your father has wronged you, don't go to Jesus, because he's not going to give you the right prescription. You go to Jesus and says, my father wronged me. And Jesus will say, man does not live by bread alone. Your father lived in the world of Caesar. I invite you to live in the world of God. It doesn't make sense for you, man. So if you know what your difficulties are, find the right teacher for them. Jesus can only be a Band-Aid. He's not going to have a long shelf life for you. So when you go to India, when you go to the Middle East, what usually happens is, because the tradition in certain parts of Africa, because the tradition has been around for such a long time, they know that sometimes people just need money. It's not because they want the kingdom of God. They just need money. Some people just need to get laid. They don't want love. And as long as you know all these different, stages that people kind of occupy, then you give them what they need. If you've been wired to help people the way you do, great, good for you. Personally, I couldn't do it. And I think it's good, because sometimes when I walk into class, and I've been with students for about 16 weeks, I can tell. I can tell from the first day who's going to be with me and who's not going to be with me. And because I don't care for those particular students, I say to myself, why fail them? I'm just going to pass them. I mean, they're going to get caught eventually. So it's good to care for those things that you think you're wired for, because then you can invest emotional, intellectual, and physical energy in the right way. Well, I've taken enough of your time. It's good to see all of you. I will send you a Zoom link. Yes, Ms. Charlotte.
I made some snacks for classes, last day, right?
Yes.
So I brought some.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. So for those of you who have time, please stick around. Charlotte brought some food. It was good to see you as well earlier.